aspect of the park, and as many of these folk have said, it needs a damn good tidy up, not change and not distraction. An example of this is the pond. For 60 years, the water in that pond was clear and clean. Suddenly, in the last 5 years, it's green and full of algae. The answer is neglect. Now, the major causes of algae in a pond are these. 1, sunshine. So why were all the water lilies removed some years ago? Because they help to keep it from going green. Green waste. This sort of garbage is being dropped into the pond and helps to cause algae, branches, leaves. I spent 4 hours the other day just cleaning up leaves from the pond. So green waste. The other issue that a pond needs to be clean and clear is oxygen. Well, a lack of oxygen is the problem with our park. We have 2 fountains. Why were they not going for 1.5 to 3.5 years? Those are the problems. And why did Lou see it looking clearer, as a number of people have commented to us down at the park? Because we have been cleaning out the green waste, and because we have got the fountains going. And we're hoping that in time we can get that lake clean, completely clean. The kids just love, I call it the lake, sorry, the pond. The kids just love that pond. They really do. The first thing they do is race down. All children do this. When they arrive at the park, they race down to the pond to see the ducks and the fish. And I believe the pond gives character and personality to our park. And sadly, there are many other features of the park that have been neglected, and I don't really need to go into them, but there's the Peace Fountain, the fernery, and the sunken lily pond and the pergola. For 4 years, the pergola has not been cleaned, and it looked disgusting. Sorry. Volunteers have spent many hours addressing the above issues and tidying the park up, and you'd be surprised at the many positive comments we have had from people as to the fact the park is looking better than it has in years. So please go down and have a look. It's far too good to be destroyed. Don't destroy it. And look, the park was given to council for maintenance. You probably didn't know that before, but you sure as heck know it now, not destruction. 1955, Mayor Jacobs stated, "The park is a unique one of its type. It is essential. It should be maintained. It is fabulous and much loved, and people are mortified when they hear of its impending change and destruction." I brought 300 plus submissions to council, all of which wanted, desired, proclaimed the park should remain intact as it is. I've not met one person who thinks your plans should go ahead, not one. And I wish I was telling you a lie, but I'm not. The whole park, as you now know, is a memorial to the men of this area who lost their lives in World War II. Please, please respect this. Please maintain the park. Do not destroy, alter, change it, or its concept. It is a wonderful park.
30 seconds.
All that is required is TLC and maintenance. And I'll tell you what else I would love to see. Plaques there for people to read so they understand the memorial features. And look at this, you know. Anyway, thank you. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Robin. Oh, Robin, you left your sign there. Our next guest is Mr. Craig Smart. Again, Mr. Smart, you'll have 5 minutes and I'll give you a warning at 30 seconds. Just start when you're ready.
All right, thank you, and good morning all. First off, I'd like to acknowledge the good work that has been done by the volunteers that go down to the park and are starting to put right some of the issues that have been the cause for concern for some time. So thank you for that. And also to Mark Dawson for making his website available, for looking at the research that's been done into the history of the park. The reason I made a submission is that my uncle, Alf Smart, was one of the people that built that park. He was an employee of the Taumata Borough Council and for many years was their Parks and Reserve Superintendent. But early in his career, him and one other were the main people who built that park. There was lots of voluntary assistance and contributions, but a lot of the rock work was his work. And I really don't want to see any more of it destroyed. It has happened out of either innocence or ignorance with regard to some work that was done there some years ago. My uncle was a returned serviceman from World War II, and the park was not just for those who died, but is also for the descendants of those who served and returned, and has two roles. There's a solemn role and also an active participation role, so people can go there and there was a playground there earlier on. It's all part of the concept, is that it's a war memorial park. It's got some solemn aspects and it's got some active aspects. And I certainly would like to see the solemn aspects retained and properly maintained, which has not been happening for various reasons. The lawns are mowed, the rubbish is picked up, that's all done well. But anything that's like technical requirement doesn't seem to get addressed. Like the pond has got problems. Nobody seems to be able to deal to the issues that we've already had presented to us. How do you fix that? It's not rocket science to have to deal with that. It doesn't need an obliteration to sort of get rid of the pond because it's not working. It doesn't need that approach. In the Boffa-Miskell report, there's a couple of things that I picked out that maybe should be looked at as well. One is that to help the staff do their job, to get a design done, is it needs to be looked at from a crime prevention point of view. Boffa-Miskell suggested that. Staff could well end up writing a very detailed report, have proposals to council, and some inputs that are required to give a rounded thing are not actually in there, and it means rework later on. So that's one thing that could be picked up and staff directed to and put into their report. The second thing is the bridges. Council's already decided to replace one of them, and I just wonder whether they could make up a shovel-ready project, have a couple of bridges, go ahead and get those replaced as standalone projects, get some funding from government, and get on with it. You've got 6 months to get your design and your consents organised. That's what the rules for shovel-ready are. What else do I want to say in my 5 minutes? The fountain. The Peace Fountain is unique in that it's like a little bit of folk art. It represents the tragedy that was the atomic bomb dropped on Japan, the 2 bombs dropped on Japan. And it should really be made to get working again as a reminder that we're not that far away, possibly, from bad things happening. And finally, one thing that's not clear to me is looking through the papers is there a budget for anything to do in the future? I haven't seen any indication of what sort of funds might be available to redevelop the park. I hope this is not a pointless exercise and that there is some money available to actually do something when a plan is prepared and it's all agreed. and it's not we're not here futile exercise. But if there is no money, obviously the maintenance, preserving the solemn aspects, but rejuvenating some of the active elements. So the bridges, let cyclists have their part of it, let people have active opportunities, would all fit well with the original concepts. Well, thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And you're bang on time. Look at that. Thank you, Mr. Smart. And our final guest this morning is Murray Downs. Again, Murray, you'll have 5 minutes and I'll warn you at 30 seconds. Oh, look at you. Quite very organised public speaker. Just start when you're ready.
I've lived on Christie Ave, which is just north of the park, for the last 30 years, and I'm an early morning runner that often goes through the park at least 3 times a week. We love having the park in our neighbourhood. It's just like a big extension of our gardens for our family, and we enjoy it all the time, regularly. To me, the root cause of the dissatisfaction with the consultant's plan is that they tried to take an existing memorial park and turn it into, and tried to use 3 themes through it. And that's just not how it was originally planned, and it's created a lot of conflict. To me, they should be sticking to the restoring of the park to its original glory, with some modern enhancements to help draw out those historical features even better, that we can do that in these days. And I'd also like to see that the council had highlighted some of the main original themes in their own park management plans. I'm not sure what's happened to those. They've probably just disappeared. I especially am grateful for Mark Dawson. Like me, he's not a good speaker, not too brilliant in our speaking, but he did some wonderful work in bringing the history to our attention. And also Dean Taylor publishing that in the Courier. And I have to give tribute, as I've just learned this morning, and that is that it was Bill Sterling who supplied the photos for the Courier, taken from his veranda. So thank you very much. Colour photos of a black and white era. So I think he did they were well presented, and it helps us give a vision of the 1950s and the intentions. And why can't I see some of these photos and stories in the park today, helping me to understand the history, as Robin alluded to a little bit there too. Yeah, for 30 years, I've attended the Anzac Dawn services, and I have to agree with Lou. I've been they're a highlight for me, and they help me feel just a little bit of what it was like for soldiers. The gardens and the trees create a great background for that. And I always enjoy the Te Mitu College head students' talks, often telling stories of our own local soldiers, and even I think I heard one about nurses and their wartime experiences. I hope we can record those talks. I'd love it if we had them recorded, and I don't know why I can't hear those at the park now if I choose to go along today, if I go there with a family or with anyone. And I'd love it if we added a small portrait circle, like you see in some grave tombstones, that have a picture of those soldiers. And I can just see some of the local entities. That just helps us connect with the people. I can see some local people saying, he looks like such and such a person, a descendant that may be alive and around in Te Mitu today. Those are the names of the soldiers that are in the sunken cross. The park is about people. And to me, the park comes alive when we tell the story of people. Much of the vegetation in the park is now at its prime as originally envisaged. I see those as stunning trees. I'm a farm forester and a nurseryman at one stage in my life. And there's unique varieties that Frank and Honor Mason grew at the Mason's Garden Centre and long ago. And it indicates to me that they had a lot to do with those trees and the ones being planted there. I don't want to see them replaced by a lot of swamp grasses and bland natives, which are not, when the stream banks have got lots of camellias that attract the tuis, and throughout the winter time.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, yes, thank you. Do you know what draws the people to the Hamilton Gardens parks? It's the different eras and fashions and themes. We have a living 1940s, 1950s memorial park, and we should be keeping that fashion and era in our park, and the way we plant it, the flower beds and everything, and telling the stories of those soldiers. I envision Mayor Jim coming along and having his diamond wedding celebration on the bridge and getting a photo taken, and please let the road stay so he can drive right up and get dropped off. Because old people like it too.
Thank you, Murray. Thank you, Murray. Look, I'd like to extend a thanks to all the guests today for providing us with your impassioned thoughts and perspectives on the concept plan. Obviously, staff, as mentioned earlier, staff will go away and do a bit further, more work on the proposal, and they'll come, and the matter comes back before us for further discussion and deliberation next month, I understand. So thank you once again, and so that just brings us to a recommendation we have here appearing on page 16 of our agenda, which is to receive the report. Oh, Roger has a question in Zoom land. You're muted for now, Roger, if you had some.
Yes, I know. I've just turned myself on again. No, I was just willing to move that motion. I just thought it was wonderful hearing those submissions and all the passion and belief that those submitters have, and I'd like to thank them for coming along today.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you for moving that recommendation to receive the report. Do I have a seconder?
Oh, Susan, I've got a few other questions that I'd like to have discussed before we go through the recommendations.
Okay.
That's all. But also, I really appreciate all of the people that have come and spoken today. Yeah, and yeah, it's pretty sobering actually to have their feedback and to understand the distress and concern that they have been experiencing. But the questions I have are actually about the staff report. Yeah, for instance, I note that there were 517 forms of feedback received, but I need some clarity on what is going to happen to the petitions, which is 233 points of yeah, because it appears that they're being excluded from the analysis. And I'm not very comfortable about that. And I'd like to understand, and I think it's because they don't fit, you know, with the design of the feedback forms, but we need to be very clear on how they're going to be treated, because I do not like the fact that they're going to be excluded.
Thank you, Claire. I wonder if Taufik and Anna, do you want to take the hot seat again? And perhaps address Councillor St Pierre's questions?
So most of those graphs, like for figure 4, figure 5, we are plotting based on the question that was asked in the survey. I can understand the petition didn't answer those questions, but they haven't been ignored. If you read on page 6, when we explain about the figure 4, we are saying that those features was supported by 204 petition to fix and leave the memorial park as it is and retain the concept or the theme of this park. So that will come out more when we're presenting our recommendation. However, part of this report was to present the feedback as it is. So if they have answered this question, we have included them in these figures. If they haven't been, but they haven't been excluded either. So like when we, as I said earlier, explained earlier, if we are talking about those features, we have included them.
I have was about the acquisition history, which is in Appendix 1. And none of those parcels of land show who donated or who, you know, the donor or the person, the vendor. And I think that's a really important thing, because often we've heard from people they had family members that actually provided the land or something like that. And in particular, the lot 5 parcel, there's an acquisition history listed, but it's incomplete because the last paragraph there says that there was one Mrs. Dawson developed an area which became known as, and then there's no more information. And I don't know whether or not Mark Dawson is a relative of that person
Page
or not.
28.
No, I acknowledge that concern and will pick it up in the next report.
Yeah, great. So if we had the vendors or the donors of the land, that would be really great. Yeah, thank you.
Were there any other questions in respect of the report for Tawfik and Anna? No other questions for them? Okay, Andrew, you look like you're about to say something.
Yeah, I'm happy to second the received report. I'd just like also to thank the submitters. It certainly provides another perspective that just reading words doesn't give. So,
Great, thank you for that. So Roger has moved the recommendation. Andrew has seconded. No further discussion on that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Aye. Carried. Great. So that brings us to morning tea. So we'll have a brief adjournment and return. What time should we return? It says on here, doesn't it? If we've got it. 10:25.
Okay. Mine will be delivered.